I was on Instagram the other day, scrolling through like a mindless I am, and saw a video of this guy.
Hell yes, we're gonna take your AR-15, your AK-47.
My first thought was, oh shit, I forget about Beto. And I live in Texas, which got me thinking. With the odds so stacked against you, why spend so much time, money, and energy on a campaign anyway? My brain is wired to think in terms of input, output, investment, and return. So what is the attraction to running for office? Now, before you Atlas diehards come at me telling me that we've gotten political, let me explain. Okay, so let's lay out some facts here. Texas hasn't had a Democratic senator since 1993, and he wasn't even elected. He was appointed and then lost in a re-election later that year. Beto was the closest a Democrat came to winning in Texas in 30 years. He raised almost double the amount of money than Ted Cruz, spent almost every penny of it, and had nearly 5 times the amount of endorsements. Now, endorsements don't usually mean much, but Beto's strategy was to play heavy on the socialites, movie stars, and famous big names that he thought would get the base moving. It's a good strategy, but ultimately it didn't work.
Tonight is a victory for all the men and women in this room and all the men and women across this state.
Beto promised big things for his supporters. Radical changes like making the first 2 years of college free and making AR-15s for military use only. That's very polarizing and a hard sell in states like his hometown of Texas. Now, again, I'm not talking about his policy initiatives or if I agree with him. I just want to point out that they are big campaign promises, and the skepticism the public usually has towards those. Like Woodrow Wilson. He promised to keep us out of the war, and then entered us into it 29 days later. Clinton promised universal health care for all, even tasking Hillary with leading the charge, but didn't deliver despite Democrats controlling both houses on the Hill. Obama kept less than half of his 533 campaign promises, and Trump kept even less. Now, of course, every single person I've just mentioned will blame the opposing party's opposition as the reason for not delivering, and a lot of that is true. But what about the politicians who do get elected, go under the radar, and spend cycle after cycle making their lives better and not the lives of those they represent? Like Senator Thomas Carper, who recently bought stock in Valero Energy and serves as the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee, or Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, who bought stock in a company called Badger Meter. Badger produces automated water meter tech, and Tulsa, Oklahoma just announced a $94 million spinning plan to upgrade their meters. Mullen is also on a Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works with Carper and represents, you guessed it, Oklahoma. His net worth has increased significantly since he's been in office. Now, this isn't new to anyone who pays attention, and I'm not saying these specific politicians are ineffective or in it solely for monetary gain. After all, doing good and making money are not mutually exclusive. But Nancy Pelosi buying call options on Nvidia just for it to rise 31% right after calls into question her motivations when making decisions that may involve her investments. Insider trading will land you in jail, but it's just another Monday to them.
Was all this legal? Absolutely.
But anyways, Beto might be a bad example. He's led a couple other campaigns, one for president and one for governor of Texas, and he lost both. He hasn't been very prominent this election cycle and seems to be taking a step back to reevaluate, although I'm sure we'll see him again. But what about the others who lost, ran again, won, and then delivered? Take Churchill, who experienced various ups and downs in his political career. He was ousted from Admiralty in World War I, faced numerous electoral defeats, yet later led Britain as Prime Minister during World War II and again in the 1950s. Or Abraham Lincoln. He lost multiple elections before finally winning the presidency in 1860. His cabinet famously included several of his rivals for the Republican nomination, like Secretary of State William Seward, Treasury Secretary Salmon Chase, and Attorney General Edward Bates. These appointments were part of a political strategy and negotiations that led to Lincoln's nomination. Despite their differences in initial rivalry, these figures became key members of his administration, playing crucial roles in guiding the country through the Civil War. This historical precedent highlights a recurring theme in politics. Running for an office, even if you don't win, can position you for other significant roles, like a cabinet position, where you can still exert substantial influence and contribute to policymaking.
And it's an honor to have his endorsement. He's going to be working with us, and he'll be working with us for a long time. Thank you.
Some, like Lincoln, Churchill, and maybe even Beto, may be true believers in changing their country for the better. Maybe the majority of politicians want to leave their kids with a better life. Or maybe they just want to get rich. Politics used to be about honor and duty. Sure, there will always be bad apples and corrupt souls. That's evident in all of society. But being elected to office was about being a hero, sacrificing for the greater good, and standing up to those who were evil. It wasn't meant to be an investment vehicle or a lifelong career choice. And for some members on the Hill, they don't want it to be. The Ethics Act, introduced by Senator Jeff Merkley, would generally prohibit members from purchasing or selling individual stocks and other financial instruments beyond diversified investments. It also restricts certain communication between trustees and beneficiaries related to the investments held in qualified blind trusts, meaning they couldn't just tell their buddies to do it for them. Maybe this will get some traction, but so far it sits in the Committee of Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. This also isn't the first time this issue has been brought forth. The Trust in Congress Act, proposed by Democratic Spanberger of Virginia and Republican Roy of my home state, didn't really go anywhere. After all, the people who would vote on this bill are the same people who benefit from the very thing they are trying to restrict. If the ethics bill were to pass, along with a term limit bill introduced by Ted Cruz for the third time, our representatives would have to do their jobs without getting rich and without doing it forever. Imagine a political atmosphere where elected officials didn't have special interests, investments to manage, and could only serve a limited time. There would be no attraction to public office aside from enacting real change. Bills would get passed faster, votes would mean something, and having guts would get you reelected. You see, if they didn't have personal interests in this game, maybe more would get done. Sometimes the real power isn't just in the public offices we vote for. It's in those corridors of influence, the backroom deals, the advisory roles, or even a high-profile position at a major company. Their interests may not be in the limelight, but they're pulling the strings, shaping policies, and influencing decisions. It's not always about being the face on a poster. Sometimes it's about being the voice in the room where it all happens. So behind the scenes, some are playing a very different game. They're not just looking to serve, they're looking to score. The next time you're scrolling through Instagram or watching the news and you see these political faces, take a moment. Look into what committees your congressmen and senators serve on. Use OSINT to look at their portfolio holdings and connect the dots. Remember, they work for us. Some politicians are true believers. Not everyone is in it for the riches of the power. We just have to make sure none of them are.